Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate 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 Vasudevaya.
So reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9, and today we have text 39. And it's a prose verse again, so I'll just read the Sanskrit and then we go word by word together. Ataha vavatava mahimamrita rasa samudra viprusha sakrit avalidhaya svamanasi nisyandamana navarata sukhena vismarita drista shuta vishaya shuka lesha bashaha Parama Bhagavata Ekantino Bhagavati Sarva Bhuta Priya Suriti Sarvatmani Nitharam Nitha Nirantaram Nivrittamanasa Katam Uhava Ete Madhu Matana Puna Svata Kushala Hyatma Priya Surita Sadavastvat Charanam Bhujanu Sevanam Visrijanti Nayatra Punapayam Sansara Paryavata. So take the word by word. Ataha. Therefore, Vava, indeed, Tava, your Mahima, of glories, Amrita, of the nectar, Rasa, of the mellow, Samudra, of the ocean, Viprusha, by a drop, Sakrit, only once, Avalidhaya, tasted, Swamanasi, in his mind, Nishyandamana, flowing, Anavarata, continuously, Sukhena, by the transcendental bliss, Vismarita, forgotten, Drista, from material sight, Shruta, and sound, Vishaya Sukha, of the material happiness, Lesha Abhashaha, the dim reflection of a tiny portion, Parama Bhagavata, great exalted devotees, Ekantina, who have faith only in the Supreme Lord and nothing else. Bhagavati, in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarvabhuta, to all living entities. Priya, who is dear most. Suriti, the friend.
the friend,
Sarva Atmani,
Sarva Atmani,
the super soul of all.
the super soul of all,
Nitaram,
Nitaram,
completely.
completely,
Nirantaram,
Nirantaram,
continuously.
continuously,
Nirvrita,
Nirvita,
with happiness.
and happiness,
Manasaha,
Manasaha,
those whose minds.
those whose minds,
Katam,
Katam,
how.
how,
Uha,
Uha,
then.
then,
Va,
Va,
or. Ete,
Ete,
these. Madhu Matana,
Madhumatana,
O killer of the Madhu demon.
O killer of the Madhu demon,
Puna,
Puna,
again. Sva-artha Kushala,
Svarartha Bhushala,
who are expert in the interest of life.
who are expert in the interest of life.
He, indeed,
Indeed,
Atma Priya Surida,
Atma Priya Surya,
who have accepted you as the super soul,
who has accepted you as the super soul,
dear most lover and friend.
dear most lover and friend,
Sadhavaha,
Sadhava,
the devotees,
the devotee,
Tat Charana Ambuja Anusevam, service to the lotus feet of your lordship.
service to the lotus feet of your lordship,
Visrijanti,
Visrijanti,
can give up.
Na,
Not. Yatra, wherein. Puna, again. I am this. Samsara Paryavarta,
Samsara Pariyavata,
repetition of birth and death within the material world.
repetition of birth and death within the material world.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, O killer of the Madhu demon, incessant transcendental bliss flows in the minds of those who have even once tasted but a drop of the nectar from the ocean of your glories. Such exalted devotees forget the tiny reflection of so-called material happiness produced from the material senses of sight and sound. Free from all desires, such devotees are the real friends of all living entities, offering their minds unto you and enjoying transcendental bliss. They are experts in achieving the real goal of life. O Lord, you are the sole and dear friend of such devotees, who never need return to this material world. How could they give up engagement in your devotional service? Purport. Although not devotees, because of their meager knowledge and speculative habits, cannot understand the real nature of the Lord, a devotee who has once tasted the nectar from the Lord's lotus feet can realize what transcendental pleasure there is in the Lord's devotional service. A devotee knows that simply by rendering service to the Lord, he serves everyone. Therefore, devotees are real friends to all living entities. Only a pure devotee can preach the glories of the Lord for the benefit of all conditioned souls. Sorry, I think it's the car. So it's a very beautiful verse today. Especially poetic is the way Srila Prabhupada he expresses the first sentence here. He says, incessant transcendental bliss flows in the minds of those who have even once tasted but a drop of the nectar from the ocean of your glories. Incessant transcendental bliss. So that's a very beautiful arrangement of words. So that's actually why you come to the Krishna consciousness movement, is because you want to experience incessant transcendental bliss. You know? That's what we signed up for. At least that's what I signed up for. You know, I don't know what all of you other people had in mind when you came to Krishna consciousness, but I came here to get bliss. You know, I didn't come here just to continue this show that I was doing before. You know, I wanted to really become happy. You know, to really get that which I didn't get in material life. That was the whole aim of the thing. So we want to have an experience of what it means to be feeling incessant transcendental bliss. So we should be interested in asking the question, if we're not feeling incessant transcendental bliss, then why is that? And if we don't feel it, how do we get it? That should be a question which our intelligence should be engaged in trying to find the answer to this question. So I thought today's lecture we tried to analyze in that way why it could be that we may not be feeling transcendental bliss and incessant transcendental bliss flowing through our minds. What could be some blockage, some obstacles to feeling that transcendental bliss? I thought that would be worthwhile discussing. So, as I called yesterday, we had the Prabhupada nectar, and I was hearing it from the kitchen. And there was one example that was given, which I thought was extremely important and practically usable for us. And that is Manida Prabhu spoke this example of a person who's walking on the seashore. And as we know, if you walk on the beach, and if you're right there where the water it meets the shore, if you walk on that edge of the beach, so to say, the waves they will wash over, and the water will touch your feet. They wash over and touch your feet. So I thought that was extremely interesting, because when we sign up for Krishna consciousness, we come and we accept the practices of Krishna consciousness, and we're eager to have transcendental bliss. We might feel still, even though that's our goal, that's actually the determination we had in our intelligence that made us come to the decision that we should join up and become devotees, to actually become devotees. Then how is it sometimes we feel that material desires, they just flood our mind, and we think of material sense gratification, it just comes up in our mind. How is that? You know, after all, we decided that we should become devotees, we want transcendental bliss, so this is a real fact, this is just a clear indication that we're not constantly feeling transcendental bliss, because these material thoughts are there, material sense gratification, it flows in and showers over us. So I thought this analogy was actually very, very useful in that sense. Because if a man, he walks on the seashore, he's walking there because he has some destination. He wants, ultimately he wants to reach somewhere. He's walking on the seashore, but just to walk on the seashore itself is not the end destination. He's going somewhere. So in the same way, in Krishna consciousness, we may be walking on the seashore, and we're walking on the seashore because it's explained that our nature is Tatastha Shakti, as Manida explained. that we are marginal energy. That means that we are simultaneously very close to the material, to the spiritual energy, because we're spirit soul and Krishna is right there next to us, sitting in the heart. You know, so the spiritual energy, the dairi, the spiritual energy is very close to us. We can it's immediately available to us. And also the material energy is also immediately available to us. We may at any moment take a dip in the material energy. That option is also immediately available. So therefore, the living being, the Jiva Shakti, Jiva Tattva, is described as the Lord's marginal energy. So, but we're walking on the seashore, and if we know what our destination is, and if we know very well our own position, that we are marginal energy, that we are that we're able to be either immediately in the spiritual energy or immediately in the material energy, we are in close proximity to both of them, then we can be a little bit less disturbed when the material waves, they flow over us like the seawater coming in on the beach and touching the person's feet who's walking on the seashore. Because we know we're going to our destination, and because we are marginal, the marginal energy of the Lord, this is simply a position. We cannot avoid the waves of the ocean coming in and touching us, and touching us from time to time. But if we are firmly fixed in our destination, we know that we're walking, and that the waves of the material ocean, they're temporary, and that we can know. Even we're practicing devotees, so many times we've experienced our mind being overflooded by material desires, or some material desires popping in our mind like that. So we also experienced it went away again. You know, after some time it disappeared, and we found ourselves chanting Hare Krishna and feeling maybe again some transcendental bliss. After that material wave, it passed over our feet. So, in that way, we can tolerate, if we know that these material waves, they are temporary. We are temporarily in touch with the material energy out of old habits, out of our previous material activities. And we also temporarily in touch with the spiritual waves, so to say. So we want to keep, to be steady in this fluctuation between material and spiritual perception. We want to simply be steadily focused on our goal. Because if we steadily focus, if the intelligence is fixed, if we never lose that determination and never forget why we came to Krishna consciousness, that is actually to achieve real happiness and real bliss, higher than the previous material experience we had before coming, then if we make that goal the lotus feet of the Lord and be steady in that goal, then we will be able to tolerate these material waves. Even though they touch us, we will not become distracted. And I thought in this regard to read one verse from the Bhagavatam, which also Prabhupada uses very poetic language in how one can be fixed, or how one should be fixed on that goal, that supreme goal. It's the verse in the 7th canto, 15th chapter, verse 42. It's in the purport, so if you don't mind, I'll just quickly search this out. So as we know from the Mahabharata, that Arjuna, he went to the Swayamvar of Draupadi, and at that Swayamvar, which was her marriage, you can say, festival, so to say, her father, Drupa, he had a fish. He had a fish hung from the ceiling, and all the great warriors of that day, all the great kings, they came. They wanted to compete. You know, who could pierce the eye of that fish hanging from the ceiling. It was very difficult because they couldn't look directly at the fish. They had to look. They had to look at the fish from a pool of water, you know, on the ground, and then from that reflection in that pool of water, they had to take aim, and they had to hit the eye of the fish, which was also protected by a revolving wheel, which had a hole in it. So that means that in order to hit the eye of the fish, you had to shoot your arrow so that it would pass through the hole of that revolving disc. So just a very little fragment of time was available by which that arrow could go through that hole and hit the eye of the fish. So it's a very extremely difficult task to perform. So Prabhupada, that's the context, what Prabhupada will say here. Prabhupada, he states in the purport. Another example given in this regard is that Arjuna, as a result of piercing the Adhara Meena, or the fish within the chakra, achieved the valuable gain of Draupadi. Now here comes the beautiful part. Similarly, if with the arrow of chanting the holy name of the Lord, one pierces Lord Vishnu's lotus feet, by dint of performing this heroic activity of devotional service, one receives the benefit of returning home back to Godhead. So I chose to speak about this because being focused on your target, being focused on your goal, is something we can learn from the archer. The archer, he is very much focused on hitting his target. In order to hit the bull's eye, you can say, or the center of your target, you have to be really focused, really concentrated. And so I was often given this example that in order for the archer to hit the target, I was always taught this, he has to have direction, and he has to have force. I say you have to aim at the very carefully at the target, and then you have to add the force. And then, if both the direction is there and the force is there, then the arrow, it will go to the target. If there's no direction and no force, then the arrow, it will not hit the mark. So I would like to speak a little bit further. How do we make our direction steady? And that very nice example that Manila Prabhu gave, I thought to add a little bit from I heard. There's another example I heard from my authority, and that is this thing, what will distract us? Because we know we should be focused on our goal. So what will distract us from our goal? And I thought also to connect, especially the most difficult thing to give up, or most potent material object which can draw us in or like catch us, is the attraction for the opposite sex. And in this connection, there's no danger really if, like in waves of the ocean, we happen to see material objects, we happen to see the material energy. We may see the material energy, and there may be no problem. But the real problem starts when we lose our direction. That only happens when we start to stare at the material energy. So I was once told this. The which you stare, she catches you, like that. We may have, I myself have experienced like that, of that practically in my own life. Like if you have any material object, if you simply look at it and only look at it and don't do anything more than that, then it is not a problem really. Then we don't get caught by the material energy. But as soon as we stare at the material energy, then it catches us. So this is also, I think, one useful point that we can keep in mind. That any Mataji, if you just look at her, you know, Sister Mataji is nice, Hare Krishna, there's no problem. But as soon as you stare, then you might get caught. So I thought also this quite a useful thing to keep in your intelligence, that if you want to get distracted in your Krishna consciousness, in your goal, only thing it takes is that you start to stare. You focus yourself. You look at you start to stare at the material energy. Then she catches you. And staring at the material energy, that means that you go for a swim in the material ocean. You know, you leave the shore and you look at the material, and you go and you take a dip. You know, and then what happens? You don't make any progress. You know, you stop. You know, you go back to the point where you entered the ocean. Then you have to go back and continue. So staring at the material energy, that means going into the material ocean and taking a dip, like that. So we want to avoid this. We want to have our intelligence triggered, you say. Like, are we staring at the material energy, to keep that in mind? Because if we start to stare at the material energy, she may catch us. That's all it takes, for her to catch us. That is, if we start to stare at her. So, we may take that. This verse itself, it also has a number of other points. There is one. Let me just go through the translation again. There is free from all desires. This is the second part of it. Free from all desires, such devotees are the real friends of all living entities. So I thought, I wrote down to speak a little bit about how impure desires spoils, how impure desires, how they will spoil everything in our relationships. As we know, we're dealing with each other on a daily basis. We have exchanges, and we try to have exchanges with the general public. We engage in missionary activities on the order of Srila Prabhupada and our authorities. And sometimes we may experience that sometimes this doesn't work. Sometimes there's a problem in it. When we try to preach on the street, we experience that this rasa is not flowing. Like there is some disturbance in that exchange, and this is actually where we can see how that when we are not free, from all desires, then we cannot be real friends of the living entities. No, there's no friendship. There's no friendship established. There's something in the way which is impure material or fruited